Let's talk about the WNBA and the league's demise now that Caitlin Clark is no longer going to play this season. The WNBA and the Indiana Fever, Stephanie White, Amber Cox, all the way up and including, let's just keep it real, Kathy Engelbert, Adam Silver, the National Basketball Association, everybody that participated in the farce.
Caitlin Clark is officially out for the rest of 2025, and the conversation just changed from highlight reels to hard questions. Did the league protect its biggest draw, or did slow whistles and mixed messaging turn a nagging strain into a season-ending collapse? Today, we unpack the timeline, the officiating, the leadership response, and the financial fallout that followed in hours. If you care about the future of the WNBA, this is the episode to watch all the way through. Before we start, tap subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a breakdown like this.
Caitlin Clark out for the remainder of the 2025 season, something we all think we knew was coming after what Stephanie White said earlier today. We couldn't be too sure until we see it for ourselves. And with this announcement from the GOAT's mouth herself, Caitlin Clark won't be returning this season, nor if the Indiana Fever make the playoffs.
The announcement finally landed, and it shook the whole room. Caitlin Clark is out for the rest of 2025, and the conversation turned from highlights to hard questions. Critics argue the league let its brightest draw absorb relentless contact, slow whistles, and mixed messaging until her body tapped out after just 13 games. Was this simply bad luck, or the predictable outcome of a system that prized ticket spikes and TV segments over player protection? Fans say they saw it in real time, night after night, as the physical baseline crept higher. Consider the compounding effect of travel fatigue, televised obligations, and opponent schemes. One factor is manageable, but the blend dulls explosiveness and magnifies risk. Observers add that culture is set in the first quarter. When early contact is tolerated, habits harden, and margins for health shrink by the week.
The WNBA and all the people that follow the WNBA and try to promote the WNBA don't understand that Caitlin Clark's game resonates with us. I say this every day, and every day I got to deal with somebody else dumb in the media. Caitlin Clark's game resonates because she's got flair, she's got flash, she's got style. I said this before, and I'll say this again. We saw Sue Bird's game. We saw Diana Taurasi's game. Kim Mulkey was Sue Bird before Sue Bird became Sue Bird. We've seen it. We haven't seen Caitlin Clark.
If you watch closely, you know why the outrage feels personal for fans. Possession after possession, Clark fought through bodies before even touching the ball, often drawing a second defender the instant she curled. The officiating crew had dozens of chances to set a tone early, yet the whistles stayed dry. Over weeks, a style of play hardened into habit. It was not one team taking liberties. It looked like an accepted environment. Later reporting echoed what eyes already suspected. Persistent off-ball hits and denials were allowed to live in the gray. Layer on travel, media windows, and game-to-game counters, and the stack becomes heavy. Analysts often say that what you permit, you promote. If early whistles are absent, a physical baseline becomes the norm, and the injury buffer evaporates.
The folks that cover the NBA, these people that play in the NBA, these people that cover the NBA, there, I said these people, all of you, black, white, green, purple, why don't you understand a very simple thing? Her game is dynamic. Like Diana Taurasi was like a jackass to Caitlin Clark. Why? Her game is what people are drawn to. And then you go to the personality. Her game is different than any WNBA woman ever. And she wins, and she shoots from deep. It's no different than Steph Curry. How many times we got to say?
The warning signs were flashing as far back as her rookie season when an outsized share of flagrant whistles involved Clark. Opponents played her physically, sometimes crossing from hard defense into theater, with clips of fouls followed by smirks ricocheting across social feeds. To fans, that felt like a dare to the league's leadership. Here was the player lifting ratings, pushing merchandise, and driving sellouts on the road. Yet she received none of the star protection observers expect in elite leagues. That mismatch is where frustration calcifies into skepticism. Add in cross-country flights, broadcast walkthroughs, and escalating scouting focus. Each by itself is ordinary. Together, they stress soft tissue and decision speed. Coaches repeat a maxim here. Standards are established early, and players adapt swiftly to whatever's rewarded.
I mean, it's a gut punch that basically encompasses an entire season of them. The Fever have lost so many players to injury, but obviously none bigger than Clark. And there was such a wait for this second season after her magnificent rookie season. And then, you know, the anticipation of her possibly coming back, only for that not to happen, takes a lot of air out of the room, obviously takes a lot of energy out of the fans, and is a devastating blow for not just the Fever and the WNBA.
There is also a simple basketball truth at play. Clark's appeal is not only numbers, it's cadence and range. She shoots from deep, threads windows, and plays with a tempo that televises well. That's why casual fans tuned in and why the backlash multiplied when that rhythm was interrupted by constant clamps, hip checks, and holds. Cheap shots are not always spectacular. The more common sequence is a nudge that cuts a step from a drive, a tug that forces a twist, or a body bump that steals space on a catch. Over time, those micro contacts become macro problems. Mix in the rhythm tax of national windows, short turnarounds, and sold-out environments. The pressure cocktail is potent. Veteran voices note the simplest principle. Officials set the ceiling for contact. If that ceiling rises, so do injury odds.
Clark, a two-time All-Star and the 2024 WNBA Rookie of the Year, has been sidelined suffering a right groin injury during the Fever's 87-77 win over the Connecticut Sun on July 15th. If you guys remember that game, Caitlin Clark put the team on her back in the winding minutes to give the Indiana Fever that lead. Clark also suffered a bone bruise at a later date during her recovery process.
By year 2, the toll was no longer isolated to Clark. Teammates like Aaliyah Boston absorbed whistle trouble and heavy contact, and rugged wings such as Sophie Cunningham drew a remarkable number of hard fouls. Fans called it hypocrisy. The sport celebrated skill while rewarding suppression. Meanwhile, the marketing engine roared. Road games moved to bigger buildings, broadcasts leaned into the Clark effect, and sponsorships stacked up. Yet inside the lines, the standard for contact felt different for the league's main attraction. That is a credibility problem. Consider the weight of back-to-backs, promotional polls, and nightly spotlight. None of that excuses reckless plays, but it explains why prevention must be structural. The game's tone is an ecosystem, and early clarity from whistles is its most powerful lever.
Caitlin has worked so hard throughout this time, doing everything possible to recover and return to the court, but ultimately, time is not on our side, said Indiana Fever COO and GM Amber Cox. While we will continue working with Caitlin and provide her with every resource we have available, there is not enough time left in our season for her to safely return, and her long-term health and well-being remains our top priority. We are looking forward to having her back at full strength to start the 2026 season. Clark appeared in 13 games during the regular season, averaging 16.5 points, 8.8 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, while helping lead the team to the 2025 WNBA Commissioner's Cup title.
The question practically asked itself. What happens when the Golden Goose stop flying? Officials are custodians of pace, safety, and fairness. And when they lose control, consequences cascade beyond a single night. The injury narrative did not stay in the box score. It traveled through group chats, radio segments, and studio desks. Suddenly, the debate was not playoff seeding, but institutional responsibility. Critics pointed to the pattern, then to the timeline, and finally to the silence. When leadership does not name the problem, the public assumes it is not being fixed. Combine the logistics load with tactical adjustments and the mental bandwidth required to handle nightly doubles. Performance becomes a negotiation with discomfort. Leaders argue that the only sustainable fix is consistent enforcement before frustration becomes strategy.
I had hoped to share a better update, but I will not be returning to play this season. I spent hours in the gym every day with the singular goal of getting back out there. Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling. I want to thank everyone who had my back through all the uncertainty. This has been incredibly frustrating, but even in the bad, there is good. The way fans continue to show up for me in the Fever brought me so much joy and important perspective. I'm so proud of how this team has only gotten stronger through the adversity this year. Now it's time to close out the season and claim our spot in the playoffs.
Rewind the calendar and a through line appears. In May, a quad tightened. In June, the groin flared. By mid-July, reports referenced the tear. Then came the bone bruise that turned hope into a closing door. None of those moments alone were definitive. Together, they read like a season written in the margins. Training camp workloads, media expectations, and a nightly bullseye compounded into an impossible equation. The second season that was marketed as a coronation became a grind of day-to-day tags and limited windows. Factor in travel miles, marketing asks, and the reality that opponents plan their week around one jersey. The accumulation adds friction to every movement pattern. Trainers will tell you the boring answer is true. Protection is mostly policy and timing.
This is on your head, Kathy Engelbert, and the rest of the WNBA Players Association executive leadership who failed to hold officials and players accountable for the barbaric style of play the Fever and Caitlin Clark have had to endure this year. Kathy, resign.
A bunch of players and coaches over the last few days have complained without being fine-worthy about officiating. I just want to see about your thoughts on if officiating is an issue and how it can be improved, because clearly there seems to be problems or a disconnect between what players and coaches feel and what officials are actually calling.
The communication profile did not help. Labels like questionable and precautionary soothe in the short term, but backfire when weeks stack up with no true recovery window. Viewers could see the telltales on the floor. A slower first step, shortened angles on cuts, and fewer lifts to the rim. Coaches know what those cues mean. So do medical staffs. Playing through pain is romantic until it becomes counterproductive. The job of a professional program is to protect the long game, even if a star insists she is close. Add the demands of national coverage, community events, and two-game swings in hostile venues. Each variable subtracts recovery minutes. This is why frameworks matter more than slogans. Protection must be predictable enough that players can trust the floor.
We've got Colin Cowherd saying, you know what? Guess what I didn't talk about on my show this year? The WNBA. Guess why? He just come out and said it yesterday. Because Caitlin Clark was not playing. That's why. He said, I led my show, my biggest, largest national sports radio show in the country. I led my show with Caitlin Clark 6 times last year. I mean, you don't lead a show with anybody unless they can draw.
Public statements tried to strike a balance. Team leadership praised Clark's work ethic, emphasized long-term health, and projected optimism for a full return next year. The resume before the shutdown remained impressive. Double-figure scoring, heavy creation, and a mid-season trophy run that showed her impact when available. Yet box scores were never the point of debate. The question was process. Was the recovery arc real, or were fans being asked to hold out hope while odds dwindled? In gyms, players know when a teammate cannot load or lift. Blend in the constant tape study opponents have done on Clark's pet actions. Physical counters arrive early and often. When that becomes the baseline, the safe path is shorter rotations, quicker whistles, and communicating timelines with respect for reality.
The ticket prices. The demand fell off a cliff. And it's not just the on-court product that suffers without number 22, Caitlin Clark. The entire weekend's economic opportunities have felt the fallout.
Then came the commissioner's moment, and many felt it was missed. The league's top voice could have named the officiating crisis and promised visible accountability. Instead, the message sounded like investor notes: expansion, growth, and general confidence. That tone landed poorly in a week defined by injury news and refund requests. Fans did not want revenue bullet points. They wanted a plan to protect the product. When leadership defaults to corporate cadence amid a safety storm, people assume the priorities are reversed. Include the financial gravity of sold-out arenas and external expectations. That gravity can tilt decisions subtly. The antidote is sunlight. Publish officiating reviews, outline sanctions, and track progress so players and fans see problems addressed in sequence.
had been used to squeeze every last cent. Trust evaporated.
For the last 2 weeks, Stephanie White knew where this was going to end up. I would say for the last month or so, they kind of had a feeling where this was going to go. The main issue, another day-to-day injury that turns into a season ender. Another day-to-day injury that turns into a season ender. And if you don't call that a lack of transparency, I don't know what to call that.
Markets reacted immediately, which made the stakes impossible to ignore. All-star expectations in Indianapolis deflated. Resale sites flooded, and the premium that attached to Clark's name evaporated in hours. Teams that shifted games into larger arenas to meet demand now faced empty rows and customer service lines. Television lineups designed around her segments softened. Sponsors who had budgeted for the Clark effect watched the graph bend in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, fans criticized the drip of day-to-day tags that kept hope alive long after insiders suspected the timeline was bleak. Fold in the ripple effects on teammates asked to stretch roles while attention concentrates elsewhere. Systems bend under asymmetric pressure. If rules enforcement rises a notch and transparency improves, the product stabilizes and trust rebounds quickly.
They could have easily said 2 months, 1 to 2 months. Be evaluated in the next 6 weeks. Instead, they played this day-to-day, game-time decision, probable, questionable nonsense for the last 8 weeks. And that is why fans are so pissed off for the most part. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I know if they were upfront and didn't BS us, people wouldn't be that angry at the organization, at least not as angry as they are now.
So where does that leave the Fever in the league? On the floor, competitors like Kelsey Mitchell keep the engine running. Aaliyah Boston grows louder as a leader, and role players grind for every possession. The long view says Clark can return stronger in 2026 if the system around her evolves. That evolution's not abstract. It means stricter, earlier whistles on off-ball hits, clear accountability for repeat offenders, and public reporting that treats injuries as reality, not marketing copy. Do that, and the sport's best skilled players can perform without a constant tax. This is why the next steps matter. Incentives drive behaviors, and clarity turns down temperature before frustration boils. When officials call the first 2 grabs, you rarely see the 6th. That is the calculus that preserves stars and elevates everyone. Here's the takeaway. This was not one unlucky play. It was a season shaped by contact standards, communication, and choices that did not age well. If the league tightens enforcement and leads with transparency, momentum can return, and 2026 can be a rebound year. Do you think officiating and leadership failed Clark this season, or was this just the risk of elite competition? Drop your thoughts below. If you found this breakdown useful, hit subscribe, like the video, and ring the bell so you never miss what comes next.